Can you tell me something more about Shawn Stüssy, about his personality, how he influences the style and the company?
Yeah, so Shawn very much had control of what this company was doing through all those formative years. Shawn was the man living large, you know. I stayed behind and I ran the company. I made sure that the details all got worked out. But Shawn was the one who had the mission to go travel the world and hang out, and that's what he loved to do. You know, I like to stay home and surf, be with my family. Shawn liked to travel, and he loved being in Paris. He loved being in London. He loved going to the clubs. The guys would tell me, hey, don't send him out here because, you know, we got to go back to work too. And he comes out, all he wants to do is go to the clubs, you know. So Shawn liked doing what he did, and he spent a lot of time in the field. His concept of fashion did not come out of magazines that he looked at in his living room. His concept of fashion came out of what he saw evolving in those places where style begins. So he would come back from New York or Paris or London or Tokyo, having lived with the guys that are setting the fashion trends and having a very clear understanding of where they were headed, because he didn't just fly in for 2 days and look in a couple stores, but he was at the street level hanging out with the guys. So he would come back, and with that kind of knowledge and that kind of a feel, he knew exactly what he wanted to do. There wasn't any hemming and hawing or any what would be the word, but just any slowness to react, any uncertainty. He was very sure of what he wanted to do. He was interpreting it and putting it into our context, but he knew exactly what he wanted to do, and it was all in his head. So he would not do sketches. We would not do preliminaries and say, what do you think, and run it by a committee. It was, this is what Shawn wants to do, and this is what we would do. So he had great influence over the direction during those years that were so formative, because fashion was changing so much, that he was out, he had the concept, he blended the concept of what Stussy was becoming consistently by keeping touch with the outside world, but filtering it through his own desire into the same look that he'd done the year before, rather than having some fragmented year-to-year look as things change. He retained the same sense of where he wanted to go, what kind of clothing we should represent, so that no matter how dramatic or how radical the fashion direction was in other places, he brought it back and filtered it down to what it should be with the Stussy name on it.
And what about today? Is he still traveling through the world, or where does he get his inspirations today?
Yes, he's still traveling through the world, but I think he's settling down a bit more. So he spends a little more time in a couple of places where he can spend time with his family. But his interest is still in being out and about. He's the kind of guy that loves to go down to Australia and islands down that way, Fiji, as well as over to New York.
Can you say something about who does the designs today?
Yes. When Shawn was more active in the day-to-day design of the company, as I said, he would travel to New York and hang out with the Stussy tribe. He would go to London and go to the clubs with some friends in London. He would go to Tokyo and go to clubs with friends in Tokyo. Well, all those people became our friends too, because, you know, I was the guy at Stussy that they knew just as well as Shawn. We made all of those friends our distributors. So our distributor in London is Michael Koppelman, the guy who Shawn would go to the clubs with. And our retailer in New York, who owns the Stussy store, is James Jebbia, who was Shawn's buddy in New York. Paul Middleman, who was Shawn's best friend in New York, works for us now as the designer. So all these people, Hiroshi in Japan, are all part of the Stussy team still, but instead of working through Shawn to give the designs to us, they work directly with us now. And we more or less interpret what they give us through that same filter. You see, Emmy and Paul and I and some others at Stussy have got so many years working in this that we very clearly understand the picture of what Stussy represents and what Stussy should be, so that when we get the concepts and the direction from all of the same people that are part of our tribe, we now know how to interpret what they want to see through our filter. So we have the same you would call it the same raw materials. The difference is the filter has changed. Instead of going through Shawn 100%, now those same ideas come to us directly from the source in the cities, in the clubs, to us directly.
Okay, could you maybe...
You know, the Stussy look, we'll just say, the concept of what Stussy should represent is that you can have variety in what you make, but it has to come back to a common, basic, understandable translation, wearable by everybody who has the same demeanor. We don't make clothing that is so out on an edge that it makes you stand out in a crowd as being somebody who perhaps is making too much of an overstatement to catch attention. But rather, we believe design, the essence of design should be in the subtleties, in what is there, in the cut, in the little twists on the traditional look that give it a uniqueness, which tells you, yes, we've bettered what the original was, but we've not tried to make such grand, fanciful changes to be unique that you make something ridiculous to wear. So the Stussy fashion look starts with the concept that everything we make has to be wearable and versatile, and not something that's so risky that you look like you're ridiculous if you wear it. Also, the colors all need to go together. You have to have a universality in the colors, a consistency, so that it doesn't look like two different companies made two different garments, that there's some theme that runs through it that says you could put all these things together and you understand, yes, that looks like Stussy. The idea is that Stussy for 12 to 15 years has been very innovative, but our innovations have come in small increments because what we started with the first time is just as good today. It's just over the years we've changed it slightly, fabrics, patterns, to more meet the fashion trends as they head out. Rather than being one year loud and baggy, the next year tight and short and quiet. Rather, loud and baggy was never appropriate for everyday wear. Let us take, for example, what's happening now. In some of the beach communities and in California, the young kids are very much into acrylic clothing, polyester clothing. It's very 70s, big lapels, loud prints, thrift shop sort of clothes. I call it thrift shop trash, you see? And that is very fashionable with a group of kids. And they all swear by it. They've got to have it. 6 months from now, it will not be around anymore. And the truth is it does not represent the look that we represent. It's a valid look, and they should make clothes for them, and there are companies that have put their whole image around that type of look. But for us, it makes no sense, because for us, the look we have is more traditional, more sensible, more timeless. And we say that, yes, we need to adapt what we do to acknowledge a little bit of what they do. But instead of polyester, we'll use cotton. And instead of big collars, we'll do a little smaller collar. And instead of all of this throwaway clothing, made cheaply, we'll make one good piece that they can continue to wear next year when the other stuff is out of fashion. So in what we do, there is this common thread of common sense, of wearability, of functional understanding, and of the fact that people, their personality doesn't change monthly or every 6 months. You're the same person you were 6 years ago. You're just more or less changing slowly to adapt to the circumstances around you. And we believe fashion is the same way. The clothes change slowly to adapt to the circumstances around you. There's no reason why there has to be dramatic shifts one year to the next, unless you have deliberately decided that you want to make the great big statement. I want to be so different, so noticed, that I make this great statement. Well, that's not our view of fashion, because while that's valid for some people, for Stussy, we don't make that great big statement. We make subtle statements. And that's what Stussy fashion is an understanding that the essence of clothing design is in the subtle changes and the subtle differences that stand for fashion, but that don't scream loudly, look at me, here I come, you see.
So, but different.
Yes.
There's a whole companies doing loose-fitted
Yes.
street style. Would you say you were the trendsetter, the first one to do it, and people followed you?
From what point in time are you looking to us to say we were the trend center? Because
You just told me you were the first
yeah,
one to do.
we view, and I think if you speak to people, they will tell you that Stussy has always been very unique and creative in what it has done. Don't mistake my talk about what Stussy fashion or Stussy styles represents as being subtle changes to mean that we have not made big influences, but rather what we started out with was very dramatically different from what other people had. But from that dramatic starting point, there was such a strong foundation. We did not need to become radical after that, but rather just to work on and modify that beginning. And that beginning definitely influenced people in our market in the color palette, and definitely influenced people in the fabrications and the quality improvement. And I think influenced people in terms of bringing things more down to a normalization of what is going to be instead of such radical departures. So now what has happened is, just like the music has become so fragmented and so many types of musics and so many types of people and so many types of activities and so many types of clubs, that the clothing has become equally as fragmented as people seek to better define who they are and to stand out as a segmented group. So that what we see around us is much more fractionalization of the market. No, not the same consistency. And now very clearly you're seeing surf as being one look and street as being another look, and things kind of more, you know, within the surf you have, like I said, the acrylic and the polyester and the big collars, and then you have the other people going to the bright nylons and the zippers and the more performance fabrics, and then you have the sport look with the sport theme logos, and then you have the more basics look. So you have all these fragments, and the customer kind of going to each and deciding which group they feel more comfortable with. So we see a lot of people making statements about what market they associate with and trying to become radical enough that they stand out as being associated with something extremely different than the norm. And we do not feel that that is appropriate for the way we choose to live. That while we identify and understand these different choices people are making, that we feel that Stussy needs to remain sort of that moderate influence on ultimate taste. That there's got to be some semblance of hinting at these changes going around, but some continuity of the fact that you're still wearing clothes that you don't want to look out of place in, that you don't want to stand out in a crowd and look as if you're from some other world, that still can be worn out at night or during the day, and that will hang in your closet and look good next year, you see. So while we recognize all these influences going around, they do not fit our style. And so we choose to sit back and wait for those things to settle down. It was interesting, the Face magazine did a ranking of designers each year. And last year's ranking of designers, they mentioned Shawn Stüssy and Stussy clothing. And the caption was so appropriate. It says, wisely sitting on the sidelines, waiting out this current upheaval in the fashion marketplace. And I think that's the best way to put it, that we choose not to react to the radical changes around us and saying we must decide, we must go this way or that way to follow the radical trends, but rather we stay true to what we believe in, saying, at least for us, we like to stay in the same pattern that we have been and hint at the sport theme, hint at the outdoor theme, hint at some of these youthful themes, but still make clothes that remain more neutral and wearable rather than so radical, extreme, and trendy.
You just said you hint
If we're to take, for example, the sport influence, it's been coming for several years now. Sport has been known in some circles as being very bright colors, very loud color blocking. But the essence of sport, which is very good, is a generation of very technical nylon fabrics and very functional sort of silhouettes that are versatile, be it zippers with mesh panels for breathability or whatever the particular design is. So instead of our making a nylon jacket in yellow with 3 color blocks and flags all over it, we'll do that same nylon jacket in blue with a natural stripe. And we hint at sport in the fact that more and more pieces in our line are being made with technical nylon fabrics. We'll use the breathable, water repellent nylon that is the next generation as part of our fabrications, with the zipper that has maybe got a color offset to give it a little more of a sporty look. But yet we've not gone so far off that you look like you're wearing foul weather gear when you go out. Okay, we do, you know, sort of the pants and the jacket that go with perhaps the polo that's got Stussy Sport or it's got an American flag. So you're hinting at that sport, but the polo is navy. Okay, the polo is not bright red. And so then you have the outdoor. We see outdoor as being a big influence, sort of an offshoot of sport. And so we start to do outdoor logos on some of the things we do. And we do some items that are wool and sort of outerwear wool influenced with the outdoor or sport theme, down parkas. You see what I mean? Or pants like this with the pockets, the billows pocket, which is something unique to us. So it's a very rugged fabric. It's got an enzyme sand wash to give it that outdoor look. Yet it's got the fit that's Stussy. Yet it kind of lets you know this is not something that you wear, you know, if you're preppy and going to college. This is something that you do when you're more sporty, more outdoor, because you're going to shove stuff in your pockets. So our clothing, while it's very wearable here in Orange County, when I go to work in the office, it hints at somebody that's going out into the jungle to take pictures of lions, you see. So that would be more the outdoor kind of an influence, but not so much so that you've got vented zippers and you've got too many pockets with places for your shell cartridges, so that it gets so busy that you can't wear it around town. So we're hinting at the fact that we see that as a very valid look. The rugged fabric, the various finishes, and the pocket treatments, which we feel are very interesting, but not so overdone that it clearly defines it as being something you can wear only to go hunt ducks, you see? So that becomes the outdoor side of things. Likewise, the young kids, some of them that are wearing the polyester, you know, sort of big collar, thrift shop sort of look, a lot of that is more retro with zippers and panels that go back to the 70s. So what we'll do is we'll give a zipper polo in cotton with a collar offset and some sort of a panel or a piping, but that makes it something that doesn't look like it's 70s out of a thrift shop, but is more like a offshoot of the kind of clothes that Stussy would have made today, but a zipper instead of a button polo, and a fit that's more today's fit than the fit that you would have seen in the 70s. So each of those acknowledges that fashion around us is looking for some very unique looks, and we feel like we can filter those into our big scheme and make Stussy's ultimate consistency fit some of those essences that are out there without making it so outlandish or so different that it's inconsistent with what we view ourselves as.
Good. One last question I would like to ask you also about the logo and the label of Stussy. How you vary it and why you have it on all your clothes or almost all your clothes.
Well, the Stussy logo that of course everybody recognizes is the stock logo. The logo that Shawn began with when we started a company was his signature. And his signature has changed since then. If you were to compare the script logo that he wrote in 1980 with the script logo that you will see now, markedly different. Taller, fatter, more compressed, okay? Recognizing that the look has changed over those years. It's become more consistent with the graffiti style of art rather than back then. So even the script logo has changed. It's just perhaps, unless it's called to your attention, you don't realize that. However, the logo in our mind is one adornment that makes up the whole package of the clothing we're designing. So when we design a piece of clothing, we're looking at the overall concept, the fabric, the silhouette, the trims, and the various construction to identify it as having a little different theme than just a basic shirt that you get out of a store. Well, if that shirt or that jacket or that short has a theme that's sport, then we may try to put a logo on it that's a little more fun, a little more sporty. If we make something that's very traditional, then perhaps we want to put something that's more like a crest, something that's more a traditional logo, not sport, or not the simple stock logo, which we consider very basic. So each logo that we design, we looked at as a piece of art, as a piece of adornment, and as much the design of the clothes as is the fabric and as the cut and as the trim of the garment. So we very carefully look to different logos that make the piece stand out. Some pieces, if the piece is very busy already, if you have color tipping, if you have a busy body in the front, then you don't want a busy logo. So we'll put either the basic logo, or we'll move the logo to the bottom, or maybe we won't put a logo at all. We'll move it to the side, a little tab. But if the piece is very simple, very basic, then you need a logo that's stronger, something maybe multicolor, something that pulls in one hint of a color from somewhere else that brings it more together into sort of a cohesive package. So each adornment we pick depends upon both the look we're trying to achieve, what group does it belong in, classic, sport, outdoor, and how busy is the garment to begin with. Should we be playing up the color differences or playing down the color differences? So that is where the choice of logo comes from. And it's actually not a haphazard selection. It is a very difficult selection because the wrong logo can kill a garment.
Great, thanks. Sollen wir jetzt noch mal was zum Bootlegging machen oder ist es denn jetzt erstmal okay?